Hello and welcome to another episode of So They Say. Today I'm actually going to start with a bit of rant. This video is about the Henry Gurnett, or Sir Henry's, or the Gurnett, or whatever name it's under at the moment. It's in Aveley near Bellis. Now I'm going to have a rant, and that's because just before I was about to do this video I decided to check something online about a little bit of detail I was looking at. And I noticed that the report that I'd done, or Thurrock Paranormal done, back in, say, I think about 2006, seems to have been all over the internet, and not one of you have credited me. Anyone who has used my report, just a little bit of credit. I mean, literally, you've just copied and pasted my report, word for word, spelling mistake for spelling mistake, and done it as your own. No, I don't mind you using my stuff. I don't mind you using my information, my stories, or the information I find out. But just that little bit of credit to say that you used it from someone else, you know, from Thurrock Paranormal or from me. I don't care who you credit, but it's not your own work. The rant out the way, we'll move on to the real reason we're doing this video. So Henry Gurnett. The site that is occupied buildings now is actually listed in the Domesday Book under the name of Kennington's. By 1806, the manor was part of a portfolio of the land held by the French Baron William de Warren. I'm probably got that name completely wrong. The first Earl of Surrey. He was however rented out to Wilworth. The manor was passed down the family line until 1300, when the land was rented out by Henry Gurnett. Henry's now had a large estate in the Wellington area, which is Aveley and Rainham. A lot of the timbers within the building are still back from that history time. It's had quite a lot of fires in the past, so we're quite lucky that, you know, there's still so much of the building actually still remaining. Kennington's house, which is now Henry's, has always been like a two-storey framed building. As I say, over the years things have been added to it and removed from it, but the structure has always remained the same. What you can't fail to mention when you talk about Kennington's, or Henry's as it is now, is that it was part of the Bellis estate. As we know, Bellis Manor, or mansion, no longer there, unfortunately, and I'll tell you about a ghost story about that as we go on, because it's quite an interesting little ghost story to that one. The building was built between 1275 and 1310, so you know it is a really old building. And you imagine some of the people that have gone over there and some of the stories there. There's links to the gunpowder plot. There's links between obviously Henry Gurnett and the gunpowder plot. Now you can go away and research that yourself, but some will tell you that meetings took place within Henry Gurnett with the conspirators for the gunpowder plot. Gunpowder plot. Now what I'm going to do, because obviously I've just found out all these reports have been put out there over the internet and used by other people, I'm actually going to tell you my version of what I found out, and so it won't be in the same words as what you're going to read. To those people that did use my report, please remember all my reports are held at the Thurrock Museum, back on the days that we first wrote the report. So there is evidence there that they are reports that you're using to claim for yourself. Sorry, I told you the rant was over and I've carried on. I promise I won't. I just got very hot and sweaty when I was reading it. You know, it really wound me up. I remember I was an anger management teacher. It was like stressed me out a little bit. Sorry. One of the common ghost stories, and I wouldn't say myth, one of the common stories about the Henry Gurnett is that a man was hung from the beams within inside the building. Now there is evidence of that in the Thurrock Museum. There's some documents regarding it. There's some old reports. I think in 1930 something there's a report where someone spoke about it, about what had happened. It was about 100 years before that, so obviously you didn't know it firsthand. So these myths or legends carry on. So there is meant to be, of a night time, you may be able to hear the creaking of the rope within the Henry Gurnett, or inside Sir Henry's as it's now called, or you may actually be lucky enough to see the figure of a man hanging from the beams. Certainly one of the stories that I was told as a kid, growing up, my parents come from Ockenden, which is right next to it, was the tale of the Headless Horseman. And the Headless Horseman was seen leaving the Henry Gurnett and riding across through what is now the fields or the golf course of Bellis Manor, and came out the gates by Bellis Manor, which lead into Ockenden. This has been seen numerous times over the years, and it's probably the most common reports we've had for a ghost sighting in Thurrock of this headless horseman riding down that lane. So back in 2006, I did actually speak to quite a lot of old residents that lived around the area, and they repeatedly told me the story of a lady that was found drowned in the moat outside of the Henry Gurnett. Now, this is obviously predating again. It was a ghost story that they were told when they were younger, and it carries on through now. But the story goes, this lady with repute knocked onto the door but was turned away. It was a cold winter's night, and she walks away. And now, some will say she was chased out of the area because people knew what she was there for. She was there for prostitution. Others will say that she wasn't, and she was just turned away on a cold night. Whatever, she was found dead in the moat. Now, while we're talking about the moat outside Henry's, or the pond, we call it a moat, a pond, it's obviously got smaller over the years, there is evidence to say this was used as a ducking stool pond. Now, this is where people accused of witchcraft were taken and put into a ducking stool. So, there's a lot of history around Henry Gurnett, and people say they can hear sort of cries and people drowning in that pond outside the Henry's late at night. Just after the first report went live, when we'd done the first investigation, I was contacted by an ex-barmaid that had worked at the pub, and she told me about a gentleman that was sitting in the corner one night when she was about to finish up. She went over there and said, "No, sir, we're finishing up now, the last bell's gone, would you like to leave?" And he sort of just signalled with his hand and just motioned that he was going to go. She went back to the bar area, started wiping down the bar, looked up, and the gentleman was still sitting there. So again, walked round the bar and said, "Sir, would you like to leave? We're closing up now." When he looked up, she actually noticed he had no eyes. Now, I don't know if that means there's like black holes there, or no, the skin had grown over it. But she didn't act very, very professional. It shocked her. She quickly retreated back behind the bar, and when she turned round, the gentleman had actually disappeared. Now, the door hadn't gone. There was a bell on the door, so when it opened up, it would ring. There was nothing. So she carried on shutting up. The other people that owned the place come down, they tidied up. Everything was locked up and secured. Just before they were about to leave, they heard the bell ring on the door as if someone had entered or left. But they knew that no one had actually been in that building at that time apart from them. During our investigation of Henry's, we put some locked off cameras up in the upstairs restaurant area. I'm going to put the little clip in there. They're not greatest quality. They're quite old and how we filmed them at the time. But what you can see is the camera is moving on its own. Now, I swear that these were locked off cameras. We even changed the tapes in between the events that you see, so the camera moves left and right on its own accord. There's nothing there. There's no cables put in on it or anything. Just that the camera it was on a locked off tripod, and the camera actually moves left and right on its own. Now, this is also a site, a location where staff constantly hear footsteps when they're all shut up. When there's no one else in the bar and no one else in the building, they hear footsteps going across that restaurant floor. And that's again one of the most common sightings or sounds that's heard within the bar area. As I briefly mentioned earlier, though, this was a site that was meant to have a ducking stool. We do have some names of some people that were actually tried or meant to have been tried there as witches in that ducking stool. So you had 1508 Joyce Duckrell of South Rockington, 1583 Angus Billing, 1592 Elizabeth Boxer of Aveley, 1616 Margaret Lambert. And just down the road in Raynham, we had Margaret Saunders and Mary Cutford. They're all tried at the Henry Gurnett for witchcraft. Other events that have occurred in the Henry Gurnett is in the kitchen area. So staff reported coming down in the morning finding out that the gas burners have been turned on the stoves, knowing full well that hadn't been left on the night before. Also, items that are put down often go missing, and I mean that's a common one what we do get in pubs, that or inns that are said to be haunted. The other thing that seems to go missing in the pub is always important paperwork. So paperwork that are mainly to do with bills and things like that go missing. Now, obviously going back into the history of the Henry Gurnett, if you think about the type of people who would have been there, we would talk about maybe the connection with the gunpowder plot, about the meeting up there with conspiracies and all this sort of stuff. It's quite apt that financial matters do tend to go missing within the pub. Also, what we do know is that a lot of the stuff that have happened in the past tends to happen when sort of things are being rebuilt within the building. So when we was there, one of the barn areas was being rebuilt, some work was being done, and that seemed to trigger a lot of strange occurrences, more sounds coming on, doors slamming in the night, things being seen outside. And I do know that at the moment, obviously, it's being transferred into Sir Henry's, so there's work going on. It would be interesting to know if more ghost stuff or strange things have happened there. So a lot of my videos are shared locally, so if you do know the people that live in there at the moment or own it, just let me know if anything strange has happened, because I'd be really interested, and I'd love to go back and check it out and maybe give them a first-hand information about what I did find out, instead of them reading it from other people's reports. No rain, just saying. Now, one of the last ghost stories I'm going to tell you about the area is actually about Bellis, or the field that goes over to Bellis. I did mention that the headless horseman is seen going across the field at Bellis, but what we've had a few reports of this, and if you are local and you've heard this before, please put a comment down on YouTube in my comment section, just to let me know about it, or any questions, ask me on YouTube about it. So this comes via a young lad, or was a young lad at the time, was taking a shortcut from being at the pub at Henry's and cutting back through the fields over to Ockenden. It was a very warm night, and he was walking across the field. He was looking up at the stars. It was very, very clear, and then he sees something that he cannot explain. I'm going to try not to laugh when I say it, because this must have been really scary for him if it's real. He looks up and he sees a lady walking about 10 foot in the air, as if she was going to open a door, and then she walked through the door, or where a door was meant to be, and disappeared. It completely freaked him out, and he literally legged it all the way home. I couldn't make no sense of this really until I found out that where he actually was and where he was standing is actually where Bellis Manor would have been, or Bellis Mansion would have been. So that lady would have actually been on the floor at one point and opened a door where the building was. So I guess this answers that question. If you're not down a building, do ghosts disappear? Now apparently they still float in mid-air, thinking that they're still there. I just thought it was quite an interesting one, because it goes against the things that I've heard before. You see sort of ghosts in buildings that haunt locations, but this seems to be haunting mid-space. They're floating up in the air where their floor used to be, they used to stand on. So I guess in one way it can give a bit more credibility that this is such a weird one, that it could be true. I'll leave you to make your own mind up about that one. I'm sorry this video is a little bit ranty. It's not quite what I wanted to do with this video, because the Henry Gurnett deserves a lot better video than this. I may redo the video in a later time with some more proper information, but I guess the fact that I found it all online under other people's names, it just put me off, and I guess it knocked my enjoyment of making the videos. But if you do enjoy the videos, please give me a thumbs up, please give me a subscription, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.